Hello team, and welcome to your next video. Welcome to your next lesson. Today we're going to be speaking a little bit on understanding self-esteem, what it is, what isn't it. And the main thing we're going to be really looking at trying to understand is challenging anxious thoughts and really just build your confidence, because the big thing about our thoughts and our self-esteem is they're basically the concept of who we are, and our thoughts influence our emotions influence our behaviors influence the results which we get, and our results basically influence the quality of your life and effectively how much you're going to extract from this program. So when we have those anxious thoughts, it's important to understand the rule, like why we're putting that in place. And the reality is we're doing it to protect ourselves. We often have these negative statements about ourselves, and it's not surprising that we feel very bad and experience these strong negative emotions. Then while we're experiencing these negative emotions and situations and coming to these conclusions, it's important to understand and appreciate that the survival instinct is in operation. We as humans are designed to survive collectively in a community, and we're deliberately trying to have a cause. It often comes back to the sort of underlying feeling of I'm not good enough or I'm going to be left, the fear of being left alone. That seems to be the two biggest driving fears that sort of influence, and you can really strip these negative thoughts and statements back. So again, when we're protecting ourselves, it's about ensuring survival to keep function. We begin to develop rules and assumptions for how to live, which protect our fragile self-esteem. They aim to guard and defend us from what we consider the truth of our negative core beliefs. Now, we may develop such rules as I must never make any mistakes. I must never show any emotion in public because it's weak. I must never go above 55 kilos in body weight. I need to be this, or like even on a sort of day-to-day basis, like rest when you're dead, or I need to be disciplined. I can't be weak. Like all of these are statements and rules that are guiding your life, and you're putting a very, very strong framework in terms of the rules that you live by. And we also may develop some assumptions, such as if I ask for something I need, I will be put down. I don't have the right support system around me effectively. No matter what I do, I don't think it will ever be good enough. And finally, if I'm not thin, nobody will find me attractive. I need to be disciplined, or I'm not motivated enough to lose body fat, and that's why I'll always be like that. These are rules and assumptions which effectively have a framework to your life. And we can also combine these. I must do everything I can to gain others' approval, because if I'm criticised in any way, it means that I'm not acceptable. I won't try on anything unless I know that I can do it perfectly, because if I can't, it means I'm a failure. I must lose 10 kilograms because if I don't, I'll be fat and I'll never get that relationship that I'm wanting. So you can start to see how the rules which you create yourself and then the assumptions are just sort of this automatic response. So it's at this moment in the video that I invite you to press pause and maybe just reflect on some of those anxious thoughts that you've been having. Just sit with a pen and paper and start to scribble down, like what unnecessary rules have you been telling yourself? What assumptions have you been making about how you live your life and your reactions and your behaviors and your thought processes? What are the stories that you seem to be telling yourself based on past experiences, based on your childhood, based on the expectations of what should be or what shouldn't be, in terms of the roles that you have as a parent, anything at all. The result of having these rules and assumptions is they often guide your behaviors, and what you do on a day-to-day basis largely determines by what rules you have living. And depending on these rules, you may try very hard to do everything as perfectly as you possibly can, avoid getting too close to people, restrict your food intake, exercise vigorously to get thin and lose a couple pounds, do what it takes to please other people, avoid doing anything too challenging, avoid doing things you've never done before. The list can go on and on and on. And all we're doing is avoiding those situations or putting ourselves specifically in those situations that affect our low self-esteem, just confirm those rules and those beliefs. But these rules and these beliefs, they're just stories that you're telling yourself. And the unique thing is, once we have awareness around these, we can then change it. So can you see how having such rules and assumptions for living might help you protect your self-esteem? Again, it's at this moment in the video where I invite you to press pause and reflect on what are some of the rules and assumptions that you've been making about how to live your life. How is that showing up? Who is that showing up with? Is there certain environments and situations that you feel that you sort of withdraw in? Is there certain environments that you feel that you do very, very well in? For example, like I feel very confident when it comes to speaking about health and fitness because it's something I'm passionate about. That's an assumption. I can speak about that for days. But if you put me in a room full of 100 people that I've never met before, I may be a bit more hesitant. I can lie back on my own self-esteem and my confidence and know that I'm not going to deliver the best possible talk if I'm speaking about finances or car manufacturers, but that doesn't have an impact on my own self-esteem. So identifying these rules and assumptions. What happens if one of your rules is I must never get above 65 kilos? I need to be this body weight, or I'm not good enough, or I'll be happy when. The effect is that this rule will guide your behaviors, making you become very careful about what you eat, constantly checking your body weight several times a day, even restricting your food intake, so that your weight stays within that rule, that guideline that you've set yourself. And this means that you can feel okay about yourself because your self-esteem is protected. Like, think what would happen if you weighed 67 kilos? How would that make you feel if you're living by that rule? And if we make these rules such as, again, I'll be happy once I lose a stone, if that's a rule, an assumption, if that's the rule that you're living by, and the assumption is, I'm not good enough, I'm out of shape, my partner doesn't love me, I'm not, whatever situation is, that rule is effectively guiding your behaviors. It means you won't be happy. You're attaching yourself to that rule and to that assumption. But you can only feel fairly good about yourself if you're able to live up to those standards that you have set yourself. For example, if you're able to maintain your body shape and weight always, you will feel okay about yourself. As long as you never make any mistakes, always gain your friends' approval, always get extremely good results at school or university, you can maintain an adequate level of self-esteem. But what happens when you can't? There is a disadvantage to these rules and assumptions. You can run yourself ragged by trying to live up to all of these rules and expectations, putting yourself under a lot of pressure in order to maintain these high standards, and that maintaining your self-esteem and avoid feeling bad about yourself. And in the long run, it's impossible to live this way. And when your rules get broken, you end up feeling terrible about your self-esteem, and it really can start to get to the point in questions who you are. However, when things might seem that they're going well on the surface, the negative core beliefs are still there. They're still there because they have been kept in place by your rules and your assumptions. This is why these rules and assumptions or your behaviors cannot really be considered to be helpful. They serve to keep the negative core belief alive, as it were. They're still in place. You still have that guiding principle. So your rules prevent you from having the opportunity to learn that you're okay just as the way you are. The following diagram below illustrates exactly what we've been discussing. So I again invite you to pause this video at this time and consider, what are some negative life experiences that you've maybe had? What are the rules and assumptions that you've made about yourself? Are they helpful? Are they unhelpful? What are the core beliefs? How do you describe yourself? If I was to write the words I am, what would then follow? And then what are the unhelpful behaviors which basically further facilitate this belief and give you more confidence in that negative belief system? Because rules need to be flexible. We have on one side rigidity, and we also have the other side flexibility. If you have nothing in place, It's just a bit of a free-for-all. It's a bit chaotic. It's a bit manic as such. Think about when you let a dog off the leash in the park for the very, very first time. It's just going to run absolutely crazy. But also, if you don't teach a dog how to be a dog, then it's going to just be obedient. It's going to not really, it's going to lose its sense of self. It's going to lose its sense of play. And humans aren't much different. We need to have the ability to seek adventure. We need to be confident. We need to be outgoing. We need to be courageous. We need to be responsible. But we need to try find that sweet spot. We need to find that flexible spot. We just need to find that spot right in the middle between, yes, we have some guidelines and principles that we're aiming for, but there are times where we need to sort of nudge things in the right direction. So let's now begin identifying what unhelpful rules and assumptions you might have been living by. When identifying your rules and assumptions, ask yourself, we can start by understanding the concept of self. Who you are, your core, and how you identify yourself will have an influence on how you act and the expectations that you set yourself. So ask yourself, this is the first step in considering. Simply finish off these sentences. I wrote 10 down here. I want you to think of the 10 most important roles that you have in your life, and then maybe consider, how do these influence your thinking? I could say I am a personal trainer. I am the fitness guy. I am the youngest of 3 brothers. I come from a divorced household. I am a son. I am from Glasgow. I am a sports fan. I am a coffee drinker. I am from Scotland. I am 26 years old, 27 years old. All of these have an influence on my thoughts, my belief, my background effectively. So pause this video and write as many of those down as you possibly can. You are a friend, you're a coffee drinker, you are a reader, you are a Scotland fan, you're a Celtic fan, you're a Rangers fan, you're a Chelsea fan, Man U fan, you don't like football. There's 1,001 different things that you can think of. Pause this video at this time and simply write down at least 10 and keep going until you find 10, I am, and finish off those sentences. Then, with each of those roles or overarching, ask yourself, what do I expect from myself when I'm at work or at school? What standards do I expect myself to meet? What would I accept and not accept for those standards? What do I expect of myself when I am socializing? What do I expect of myself regarding my weight, my shape, and my eating? Pause this video and scribble down a couple of things. Challenge these thoughts. It's kind of like taking it to court. What's the evidence? You're sort of creating a case study. Have fun with it. Be a bit more creative with it. Here's the facts and figures. How strongly do you believe it? Now, it's important that you write these down. So pause the video at this time and work your way through this. So, what sorts of rules and assumptions have you made for living? Take a few moments to jot these down. Some rules and mottos can be helpful, but we want to focus on those that are unhelpful and keep you locked into a pattern of low self-esteem and disturbed eating and weight controlling habits. Statements like I must, I should, I have to always, or else, I should never, if I do this, then that means this, if I don't do this, then that means this. I must never show any sign of weakness or back away from a challenge. I should never eat any carbohydrates. I must always be the best at everything. If I let people know the real me, they would think I'm a total loser. If I eat carbs, I will get fat. If I don't work as hard as I possibly can, I won't gain recognition from my boss. These are rules and assumptions which you sort of live by. It's kind of that rest when you're dead, sleep is for the weak, like that. That has an element of, yes, that can be helpful, but if we, again, are too rigid to that, when you need to take a break and you're not flexible, you're not in that sweet spot, it can cause a lot of harm. So, identifying your negative self-evaluations here. What is at risk here? What am I saying to myself? Like, how am I evaluating myself? If I stood in a court of law and I had the defense and if I had the opposition, what would I be saying to myself? Would I be criticizing myself? Am I putting myself down? What unhelpful behaviors did you engage in? On a scale of 0 to 100, what emotions am I feeling? And you can refer back to the feelings wheel, which we'll use in another session. How much do I believe these evaluations of myself? Again, 0 to 100. having the ability to quantify these emotions and these evaluations is a great way for you guys just to bring awareness and challenge it. Because if you believe it 100%, we're not really opening things up. But if you believe it 90%, we can start to question that 10% and we can start to explore that. So how do we challenge your negative self-evaluations? As I said, this is us stepping up. This is the defense attorney. This is where you come back and save the day. What is the evidence for my evaluations? I'm not good enough. I'll be happy when. What evidence do you have for that? What is the evidence against my evaluations? It's important to weigh up the pros and cons because there's benefits to everything, no matter what happens. Are these opinions I have of myself, or are they actual facts? Are these just assumptions? And like, would your friend say this about you? Would your partner say these things about you? Or are they just your own opinions? Might someone else have a different point of view? And how helpful is it for me to evaluate myself in this way? Now, the next step is gain perspective on your negative self-evaluations. How else would I view this situation? What other perspectives are there? If I was to look at this from an outside lens, what would I say to a friend, for example? What advice would I give to a friend? What would be more helpful behaviors that I could carry out that would help my situation? And create a list. And it's important that you write these out. Last but not least, we're going to balance your self-evaluations. A more balanced evaluation of myself is one part. The second part, what's the middle ground? Again, really leaning into what would I say to a friend in those situations. It's important to have these guidelines, but sometimes you need to be able to bend the rules as such. How much do I believe my original negative self-evaluations on a scale of 0 to 100? How intense are my emotions? So look, your self-esteem isn't fixed and has been influenced by a number of different factors over your lifetime. It's important to remember that low self-esteem is a learned belief. That feeling of I'm not good enough. Who told you to think like that? Where is your first idea that came from? And with the right patience and effort, you can learn and improve your self-concept, and I promise you that your confidence will follow. So simply finish the recording here, and I will see you in the next